Greetings, fellow book lovers, and welcome back to Colin's Corner. Today we are going to be going over everything that I managed to read in the month of August, but before we do, we have to go over the answer for the last Comedy with Colin segment, where I asked you guys the joke, what do you call a person with a briefcase in a tree? The answer? A branch manager. Alright, with that out of the way, let's move on with this list. This was vacation month for me, so I planned on getting a lot of reading done, and I got a lot of reading done, thank gosh. So, I didn't read a lot of books. I only read 4 total books in the month of August, but my page count was really high, specifically because 2 of the books that I read were really chunky books, but I am very happy with the production that I managed to get to last month. And the first book that I started with is going to be book 1.5 in the Protectors of Brittany series by Mike Mollman. Now this book, the main chunk of it is actually 2 novellas, but it does open with a short story about Grame, who is our main character from book 1 in this series, becoming a druid. It was really nice to just briefly touch base with Grame because the events, the concluding events in becoming a druid were pretty riveting. So it was really nice to just check in and see kind of where he ended up before we get to book 2 in the series. Remember, Sins and Sorrows is book 1.5, and book 2, which is what I'll talk about next, we are following Grame again. But in this book, the main chunk of it, like I said, is 2 novellas, which are following 2 side characters from becoming a druid. The first is Conwenna. Now, Conwenna, when we met her in becoming a druid, was a wife of a blacksmith. She was a mother to Fiegel, which is Grame's nephew, and she was kind of just living a pretty mundane life on the home front, kind of just taking care of homely needs. Very kind of, I don't know, unassuming. Didn't really think that much of her as a character, but the only thing that piqued my interest, remember, in becoming a druid was that she is a possessor of one of the forms of magic in this world, called the Sorum magic. Now, the Sorum magic is kind of like a telecommunication magic, but also allows the user of this magic to influence the mind of others. So in this novella, we get to learn a little bit more about Conwenna's history, about her relationship to this world, and it just so happens that there is a little bit more than we originally thought when it comes to this character. So I really enjoyed learning more about her and how she has influenced in the past this world and will influence this world in the future. The next novella is about another side character from becoming a druid named Alfswitch. Now, he is a thief and, quite frankly, a very just despicable person. It was very interesting to read his point of view because he was genuinely just a wholly unlikable character. For the entirety of the novella about Alfswitch, really was actually hoping that he would fail at some point and just, I don't know if die is the right word, I don't know. I was really praying, just hoping for his plans to fail. That's how much I didn't like him. However, it was a very interesting read, and I think was a bold choice by Mollman to write a character this way, because I didn't like him in any way. But there were a few moments in this novella that humanized Alfswitch and made him a more believable villain, a more believable antagonist. It wasn't just simply a mustache twirly, annoyingly bad just for the sake of being bad. He had motives, he had good reasons for his motives, but he was just such a bad person that I have to say, I enjoyed this reading experience in the sense that it was really genuinely unique to follow along his journey across the land and watch him get into the different, I don't know, foxholes that he gets into and how he's going to get out of them. So I definitely recommend, if you have read Becoming a Druid, to continue on with Sins and Sorrows. I think it's a great way to learn more about the world and a couple of the characters that we just got to briefly meet and hang out with in Becoming a Druid. Just realized I forgot to hold this up when I was talking about Sins and Sorrows, so there's that. But the second book that I got to in the month of August was called To Speak with Elders. This is book 2 proper in the Protectors of the Brittani series, and this book picks up just about a month after the concluding events of becoming a druid. We are again following our main character named Grame, but in this one we are also following Grame with his nephew Figal. Now Figal is Conwenna's from the Sins and Sorrows novella. That is her son. So it is Grame's nephew, and Figal also wants to become a druid. Now there is a catch, and this is kind of where the conflict in To Speak with Elders comes into play. But Figal also possesses the Sorum magic, the telecommunication magic that I mentioned a little bit earlier. The druids in the Sorum are practitioners of different magics and therefore are basically enemies. So what this book essentially is Figal and Grame are tasked with a seemingly unachievable, impossible to achieve type task to prove Figal's worthiness of being allowed to attempt to become a druid and to begin his druid training. Grame and Figal's relationship throughout this book is just a lot of fun to follow. It's very endearing. There's a lot of laughs. There's a lot of moments where it's almost like an older and younger brother dynamic between them, where they both kind of get on each other's nerves. And there's just a lot of moments where I found myself chuckling or smiling while I was reading, which is awesome. Grame is a very funny character, and the way that it's one of those situations where it's almost like you're so close to somebody that just the stuff that they do, the little idiosyncrasies, just kind of irk you a little bit. So there's a lot of that going on throughout the course of their journey. We get introduced to multiple new races in the world, and centaurs are one of them, which they are a fantastical beast, but I don't see a lot of them in the fantasy that I read or the fantastical movies that I watch. So it was really cool to see centaurs on the page. We also get a variation of giants that is pretty interesting. We also get to explore more of the politics that kind of drive Brittani, and I thought that it really helped me feel more grounded in this world and become a lot more invested in the overall story. It was still about Grame, but it was less focused on Grame and Figal, because we got to learn a little bit about the history behind some of these different races' relationships, why some of them are at each other's necks and why some of them don't get along, different factions of druids and stuff like that. So it really fleshed the world out a lot. The world feels more lived in to me after reading this one, and I think it was a really great second installment to the Protectors of Brittani series. The third book that I read in the month of August was book 2 in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, Dead House Gates. Now I'm not going to harp too long on this one because I do plan to do a dedicated review for Dead House Gates if I can find the time to compile my thoughts. But yeah, I want to do a dedicated review for all of the Malazan books that I read. I just feel like it's helpful for me to kind of unpack the story in a way that is like a review style. So you guys can be on the lookout for that in the near future. But with this one, as soon as I kind of felt like I got my foothold a little bit at the end of Gardens of the Moon, boom, we moved to a completely different continent. Thank you, Steven Erikson, for that. And it was a little jarring at the beginning, but there are a few characters that carry over from Gardens of the Moon and that we follow in Dead House Gates. But for the most part, we are following completely new characters, and I was worried that it might take me a little while to become invested in them, but I was sorely wrong in that I was invested in pretty much all of the different characters that we follow in this story almost immediately. Where Gardens of the Moon was extremely exciting and exhilarating because everything was new, Dead House Gates was like, okay, things are serious. Dead House Gates wasted no time getting down to the nitty-gritty. There are some very heavy themes being explored in this book, and some extremely dark and grim events taking place, as you can imagine, where there's revolutions happening, because obviously the Malazan Empire is trying to be an empire and take things over. So there's revolutions going on. There are refugees, slaves. There's a lot of really heavy stuff that goes on in Dead House Gates. Sounds strange to say that I enjoyed it. I did, though. It was unbelievably compelling. I could not put this book down. This book happened to be the one that I was reading while we were on vacation for a week this month at the beach, and we were in this house that we rented. There was this little indoor front porch kind of separated from the main house. If we were not at the beach or out to dinner or out doing something, I was nuzzled up on a couch in the corner of this room, just obsessively reading this book. I could not put it down. So again, book 1, book 2 of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, definite home runs for me. I cannot wait to continue on in this series and see where the heck this world is going to go. I have no idea where Erikson is taking this, but I am here, I am bought in, I am on this train until the ride stops. The 4th book and final book that I read in the month of August is going to be Golden Fool. Boom. This is the 2nd book in the Tawny Man trilogy, and it pretty much picks up right after the events of Fool's Errand, which is book 1 in the Tawny Man trilogy. Golden Fool is lots of people's least favorite book in the Tawny Man trilogy, but not because it's bad. It's just simply because many people think that Fool's Errand and Fool's Fate, the bookends of the trilogy, are just like near masterpieces. So I cannot wait to get to Fool's Fate and see how this trilogy ends. But we are talking about Golden Fool here, and Golden Fool is a lot of day-to-day life, day-to-day court life. We spend a lot of time in and around Buck Keep in this book, and Buck Keep is quickly becoming, if not already, my favorite place to hang out, my favorite setting to hang out in fantasy literature. I love reading about events going on in Buck Keep. One of the coolest parts of Golden Fool was that different areas in the world are finally kind of getting caught up with each other in terms of events that have happened to separate groups of people, to separate cultures. Events that we've read about up until this point that kind of seem disconnected from the main overarching storyline, the main overarching plot, are finally getting tied together. It kind of felt like, you know, there were some events in Farseer and some events in Liveship, and it felt like there were sections of the puzzle built, you know, when you're building a big jigsaw puzzle, when you start to get like portions of it built, and then Golden Fool felt like we were starting to put some connecting pieces together, and these larger plot threads were kind of getting tied into the main overall picture. So I thought that was extremely exciting to just see how the different cultures and peoples were going to react, communicating with each other about things that have happened to them in recent events. So there's a lot of that going on in Golden Fool. There's not a ton of action. There is some action, and when it happens, it hits hard, but I am totally cool with this style. I am comfortable with it now, with Robin Hobb at least, and I honestly, I mean, this is a long book. I honestly could have read another 250 pages of just stuff going on in Buck Keep and been totally fine with it. I really, truly love the way that she writes day-to-day life for Fitz and the other characters in the Keep. So this, again, was another hit for me. Robin Hobb has not missed yet. I've already done a discussion with this book with Ben over on his channel, Books with Bengus Khan. So if you want to go ahead and check that out, I will link the video for our discussion in the description of this video. That is going to do it for my month of August. Now, I managed to get to, like I said earlier, a lot more than I really thought, and I anticipate my reading and video production to be going swiftly downhill in September. I'm going to try to get out as much as I can and read as much as I can, but I am back in school, my wife is back in school, our daughter is back in school, and On September 16th, like I mentioned in my TBR video for the month of September, my wife and I will be celebrating our marriage with friends and family with a wedding. So that is going to be just a beautiful and wonderful day that we are in the very near end of the planning stages for. So it's getting really exciting to finally just see this day unfold, and I cannot wait to celebrate with friends and family. Maybe in one of my wrap-up videos for September, or for a TBR video for October, I might try to add some pictures that my wife approves of. I'm not sure yet, but I'd like to share some of that happiness with you guys that have been watching the channel. So that's coming up. And then one other thing that I just want to mention is that within the past few days, the channel has surpassed 400 subscribers. So I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you to anyone and everyone that has taken any time out of their day over the past, I don't know, 7 or 8 months to watch some of my videos. I am so amazed by the support in the book community, and I've met some truly wonderful people, and I haven't even been doing this for a year yet, so I can't even imagine where I'm going to be 5-6 months from now, but I am here for it. I'm having a blast, and I just again want to say thank you so much to anybody that has supported me up until this point. Before we go, we of course have to do comedy with Colin, and today's joke is going to be, why did the ghost go to rehab? If you think you know the answer, then drop it down in the comments below. I genuinely love reading people's guesses, and I love when people get it right for the comedy with Colin. It's just something that I really enjoy doing. So thank you guys who entertain the comedy with Colin segment. It makes my day when people comment guesses and stuff like that. But I hope you are all enjoying what you're currently reading. And remember, you're always welcome in Colin's Corner.